Hello, this is Mark from I Am Organic Gardening, located in Zone 6B in the state of New Jersey, and welcome to this beautiful fall day. And this morning I woke up to a good heavy frost that we received last night. And those beautiful comfrey leaves are also glistening with that frost too. Now when that frost has put to sleep some of our most popular plants that we've grown over the summertime, now it's time to plant up something different called cover crops, and that will help our garden grow soil over winter. So here we have a fantastic chart out of a local seed company I deal with. Now the name of the company I deal with is Johnny Seeds, but I deal with lots of seed companies. I endorse them all. I've always had good luck over the years with every single seed company I used. Now this chart is also on my Facebook page labeled I Am Organic Gardening, and it's posted on March 17th of this year. Now this will give you an idea of what I'm using and how you can follow along to use certain crops in your area. So now, what I'm going to be choosing today to plant up is crimson clover. Now, you can say here that it says you can plant at any time. You don't want something that says spring or summer. You usually want something called like late summer, and also these items here are perennial roots. Now you can verify that through the seed company if they're perennial roots, and that's what you want, is a perennial root in the ground to overwinter, because you want that living root in the ground as a host to grow that mycorrhizal fungi, which is going to help grow and build your soil aggregates, and that's what you're going to be doing for 6 to 7 months over the winter time. Now, the first one I'm going to be using that I'm picking is crimson clover. I can plant it any time, and this is the soil temp, should be around 45 degrees. And it's going to be 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch deep. And the other one I'm going to be using is winter rye, and that's also anytime. Now that's a lower soil temperature, around 34 degrees, that I can germinate at, and that's going to be 3/4 to 2 inches deep that I can plant that. Now look over this chart. If you have any questions, you can contact me, or the best way to ever contact and get the correct information obviously is contact the seed company directly, and they'll inform you what to use in your area. So here's one of the raised beds in my garden in my backyard. Now it's about 10 feet wide and about 50 feet long, and I'm going to plant up those 2 cover crop seeds in there. So the first thing I want to say is that in the past years I would always kind of just plant up the whole bed with winter rye, and it would be this thick, lush green mat of winter rye growing all winter, even after snow falls on it in early spring. And I know a lot of you people out there have had problems trying to terminate it and difficulties. So now what we're going to do is, it's all about choices. It's up to your choice to see what is beneficial in your garden. The reason for the cover crop is that we want to establish and grow soil, and that is caused by building aggregates in the soil. So what is a soil aggregate? Right in front of us now we have a little bit of a tilled soil, so I can plant my seeds in there about 1 inch deep. Now this is soil, but there's no aggregates in there, meaning you see how soft and loamy it is, and just it falls out of your hand. What you're looking for is clumps of dirt that are stuck together. Now that's why tilling is bad, because you break up all these soil aggregates. Now this is sand, silt, and clay, which is your mineral base. And also this little tiny pebble here is also minerals. Now what we want to do is grow our microbial activity in there to eat this minerals in the sand, silt, and clay and give it to our plants. So let me show you what a real aggregate looks like. So I moved back over to my comfrey plant. So I'm going to dig at the base of the comfrey plant, because it's been in the ground since probably early this spring when I did the transplanting of it. Now, it's been in the ground long enough for around the base of the root system, which I'm going to dig up and show you a clump or an aggregate of soil. Now that has formed mycorrhizal fungi through the soil, bind all those sand, silt, and clays together to make a clump or aggregate, and also to hold it together, it's just using something called glomalin. And only that way you are building soil, truly building soil in your garden, because now it's a home to all those microbial activities, meaning bacteria and fungi. We want both in our soil. Weeds just grow bacteria in the soil, Plants grow bacteria and fungi, but pretty much dominating fungi more than 50%, and that's what makes our plants healthy and nutrition for us. So let's dig at the base, and I will show you a clump of soil that's an aggregate. Okay, now you can see here, this is an aggregate. Now, how do you tell if it is or not? Because you should see all the little tiny roots from the main plant, and that is sending off mycorrhizal fungi. This is just done free in nature. And when you break it apart, it splits in half, almost like an egg. And then you can see how beautiful and clumpy that soil is. It's not just hard and compressed. All this, even when it's dry, is being held together by something called glomalin, which is a glue that comes out of the mycorrhizal fungi into the soil. That's why we plant a cover crop. We're going to do the same thing with a cover crop as what the, let's say, this permaculture Comfrey has done. We're going to do that, use that same permaculture theory and grow our soil. This is just amazing, and this is just done in a couple of months, and this is why I'm not worried about just tilling the top of the soil in my garden bed. I want to show you this example of how well it comes back together. This holds moisture. This, let's say, invites worms and everything else to be healthy again in your system. But one last thing I want to share with you. This is doing this at such a microscopic level, not this big clump. In this spot, let's say right here, in this clump, there's over 1 billion microbes growing inside here in little canals, and everything is working fine in there, bringing water down from the surface and feeding all those microbes when they receive that water when it rains. Just beautiful. And this is sand, silt, and clay being held together. Those aggregates are home for all the microbial activity in soil. It retains water and recycles nutrients because of all those microbes, and that's what we want to do. We want to build them for the next 6 or 7 months in our soil. So applying the cover crop, so before we ever start anything, we want to figure out how we're going to terminate the cover crop. Winter rye is difficult to terminate it when it's not grown to its full potential until it gets to like the straw stage where the seed head up on top is actually blooming. Now that's why we're going to mix. We're going to do, you can either do lines this way or across here, but I'm just going to plant, let's say, the width of a rake. I'm going to start winter rye in a stripe this way, and then I'm going to go further down the bed and plant a stripe of crimson clover, and then another stripe of winter rye, and so on. Now, also too, people say, why don't you just mix the two together and throw them in the bed? Because it's easier to terminate the crimson clover in the future than the winter rye. And also too, if I want to terminate the winter rye instead of the clover, because a clover will bloom next spring around Mother's Day for me, that will attract beneficial insects also to the garden. Plus it looks good too, so I might get rid of the winter rye instead ahead of time. So now we still have the beneficial. So right where the winter rye and the crimson clover meets, I can plant seed in that group or that row right there, or I can put a transplant in there after May 15th, my frost date. So it's all up to you. So you can, again, do rows this way or this way. It's specifically up to you, but using two different types of seeds. This way you have a choice to terminate something ahead of time, whatever is easier for you or whatever you want to look best. And this way it will also grow soil again for those 6 to 7 months. And you want these in your garden too. This is a beetle running away trying to get some shelter, and it's found a little spot right there. At the end of the video I'll explain why you want beetles in your garden too. So in my raised bed here, the board is about, let's say, 5 feet long that's in front of you. Now I'm going to plant up some crimson clover on the left hand side here. We're just going to sprinkle it out around the whole surface because I want to get as many roots as I can in the ground. Now we'll just do that. Make sure that's good. And we're going to do a zebra pattern. So what we're going to do is this. I'm going to do crimson clover here. That's the size of my rake. So I can rake it in. And on the other side, I'm going to do winter rye. And then I'm going to do either way to go to your left or your right. So let's say this is the crimson clover again. I'm going to plant winter rye over here, let's say 14 inches wide, and go right down my bed. So the reason why I'm doing this, or the striping method, because it's a lot easier to, let's say, break down or terminate the clover than it is a winter rye. The winter rye is going to take a little bit longer. And what I'm going to do is also with these stripes, what you can do is let the crimson clover grow a little bit more, because it's a lot easier to terminate than the winter rye. And then you can go back in the winter rye. If you have it, you can always take some mulch. Once that winter rye is grown up to, let's say, a couple inches tall in the springtime, you don't have to wait to get complete to become straw. You can just layer a mulch of leaves on top if you have it. If you don't, you can use cardboard or anything else, and that will terminate. You don't ever want to till it in. You can cut it off at the surface with a weed whacker if you want to also too, and right at the surface that you see now, and then you can plant right into it. You don't want to till the soil because you're going to ruin all those aggregates you made over the winter. Then on this side, we're going to do our winter rye. Just that simple. We're going to rake them both in. This one we have to go to that ½ inch, quarter inch to ½ inch, like so. Cover that up. Very nice. And this side we're going to go down at least 1 inch. Get those seeds in the ground, like so. Beautiful. Now what you always should do at the very end after doing all your seeding, you should always, if you can, water the bed at least 1/4 inch deep to make all the seeds sit in place, and then you're all set. I want to share something with you that has changed over the years. When I first started organic gardening, like let's say more than 10 years ago, the biggest thing was you had to grow legumes, your clovers, your peas, your beans, alfalfa, and that was all to put nitrogen back in the soil. That's not true anymore. Does it put nitrogen back in the soil? Yes. But as soon as it starts blooming, it takes that nitrogen that it has put in the soil and takes it back out and puts it in the plant and creates proteins. Those proteins are made to change over, also to share with other plants prior to it, but only sharing through mycorrhizal fungi, not so much about putting the green manure back in the ground, because you had to till it back in, which you destroyed all the aggregates, which is just backwards. So what this does, and what the clover plants do, and the beans and the peas, that gives us protein in our life. If you eat peas and beans, you have protein in it. Clover is meant for other things like animals to eat, and alfalfa for them to get protein in their system too. It's a plant-based protein for the world, and that's what legumes are for. It's not so much about putting nitrogen back in the soil. It was just crammed down our necks when we first started organic gardening. You had to grow fields of clover to get the nitrogen back in soil, but now we know that with the microbial activity in the soil, it will eat our sand, silt, and clay and break that down. The bacteria and fungi will break that down and give our plants protein. So that's what it comes down to. So if you read old books and old information, that's what it's not about anymore. It's about actually just giving protein to animals and to ourselves. I want to thank you very much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and share it when you get a chance. It helps out my channel immensely. And also, I'm going to talk about that beetle for a second. Those beetles are never harmful, or any insect in your garden is ever really harmful. There's a couple bad ones, but there's actually 10 more good ones than bad ones out there. So there's a ratio of, like, let's say 10 to 1 of very good insects compared to bad insects. What that beetle does is also eats weed seeds. And also what it does is that when it crawls along the surface or digs down the ground, it picks up spores on its body, that mycorrhizal fungi, and spreads it around from one plant here to another plant or something you put in the ground. And that's a lot of questions you might ask too. This mycorrhizal fungi that I talk about, do I have to buy it? No, you do not. It is naturally occurring in your soil. it can last up to 100 years. They're little tiny little capsules that you can't see them unless you look at 400 magnification, and those guys just are amazing to stay alive once they get near a root system by spreading around by beetles, spiders, worms, birds, anything that's in your garden. If you have chickens around your garden, it will be on the chicken's feet and move from one spot to another spot. It's all good and it all works well in nature. Nature never created a problem or lacking in something. It actually is building something to keep you healthy and keep the world healthy. So enjoy it. It's all working for free. And I thank you again so much for very much for watching.